years with various print publishers. And Nature Education started actually probably about 7 or 8 years ago with Citable, which is an open educational resources platform. And about 4 years ago, the Nature Education decided to develop a saleable product geared primarily towards introductory biology majors courses. And what I'm going to give you a quick overview before we look inside. The reason that I joined Nature Education is I felt strongly that there needed to be an alternative to the print publishers model, and I wanted to be part of that. And here I am 3 years later. So what are the reasons why instructors adopt principles of biology? There's a number of them. One of them is that the modular organization, the content is chunked in smaller units, but it still has comprehensive coverage. The content is delivered in a variety of ways, including text, images, interactive figures, animations, and also primary literature. The primary literature introduces students to scientific communication, the sort of dynamic nature of science. It is very easy to customize, and you can very, very readily personalize this book in a couple of significant ways. There's supported course management, and finally, it's a good value. What are the reasons why students like it? I'm going to refer back to the modular organization. The content is chunked in smaller units, and I've heard a lot of anecdotal stories about faculty telling me that the students appreciate getting through the content more readily. They like the price. It's a fair value for the curriculum materials purchase. Importantly, their access does not expire. So there's no penalty for retaking a year or so down the road. And on the positive side, if a student's going to go on and study for MCATs or professional exams, they're going to have an updated reference over time, and they simply will not have that benefit with any print textbook that they buy. There's useful study resources, and then they can access the text on desktops, laptops, iPads via download in any browser, and they can also print it. So there's a convenient variety of ways of accessing the textbook. And as you think about the presentation today, perhaps you might think about some of the challenges you have in teaching intro biology, and what are some of your students' concerns. And as was stated earlier, you can share questions in the chat box. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the site. And when you sign into nature.com/principles, you would sign into the site, and you click on My Bookshelf. Now, My Bookshelf has a lot of books, but if you have a sample copy of the book, what you will see is this, the Introductory Biology Sample Classroom. And this is the default text that you would start with to look at, to evaluate, and if you liked it, if you were to adopt it, then you can modify it. And basically, it is the entire content of the text, 193 modules. The content is sort of what you might expect. You've got chemistry, cells, genetics, evolution, diversity of life, botany, physiology, and ecology. The sample does not have, it has one module of PowerPoint slides that you look at, and the assignment or test bank is released upon adoption, although can be viewed in a demo environment with me as a specialist or another colleague. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to a published course, and I want to illustrate a couple of points here. So I'm signed into a course that I modified, and what I did is I made this the way that I wanted it to be, and I basically moved evolution up front. I tweaked the name of the module. I moved ecology up front, and I took a small subsection of the diversity of life content and called it diversity of cells. And unlike a print custom text where in doing a custom version of a book, you may get a price concession, but at that price concession, you lose content. That is never the case with Principles of Biology. So if I click on Student View, and I click on Study Resources, the additional content that I've hidden from my main page which is where I would be focusing students on the content I expect them to read, they still have the supplementary modules here. So they never lose any content for this book. Another way that you can personalize the book beyond the way that you organize the readings is in the notes that you can share with students. So I'm going to scroll into module on climate change. And I actually included a note here. I'm going to view it. And it's something that I shared with my students. And you can be as creative with this as you'd like. You can include comments for outside sources. They're not hot linked, but you can just copy and paste them into your browser. You can do with it what you like. Again, this is another way to personalize the text, and the students will see this in their version of the text. Since we're in this module, I'm going to plan out a couple things. So in each module, you have anywhere from 1 to 4 subsections. This one actually happens to have 1 section. You then have the summary, and the summary restates the objectives of learning outcomes. And then you do have key terms which include a pronunciation guide, which you may not be able to hear from here, but I will try it. And the benefit of that is that whether students are second language learners or native speakers, there's so much terminology in biology, and much of it's based on Latin. So that's a nice little thing to have. The end of each module has anywhere from 5 to 7 questions defaulted, and these are effectively like a digital version of end of the module questions. And these can very quickly be assigned as assignments as part of reading to sort of hold students' feet to the fire to make sure they read content before they show up in your lecture on any given topic. Couple kinds of integrative content are included down the side. And there were 5 articles commissioned for Principles of Biology specifically for the text on topics that hopefully any incoming college freshman or returning adult student will have at least some familiarity with. 3 of them are biomedically oriented. There's 1 on genetic engineering, 1 on stem cells, 1 on cancer, and there are 2 on climate change. And noting that there's also a module on climate change, there is actually fairly significant content on this topic in Principles of Biology. So we'll just scroll down. It's basically a more in-depth coverage of some of these topics than you might find in a typical introductory majors text, including data and references and whatnot. One of the other things that's unique about Principles of Biology is that we integrate 75 primary literature articles from various Nature journal publications. And these include the original 1925 Australopithecus article, the Watson and Crick discovery, and so on and so forth. And they're integrated into modules as appropriate. So we'll just click on this one, classic paper on ozone hole. And each of them includes a couple-page synopsis, giving the students the background and what the discovery was, and then some questions for discussion. And it's actually significant some questions for discussion. Sometimes there's a schematic figure, and then you get into the actual article. do we have any questions thus far? Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is just show you quickly a couple of the ways that you can assign student work and track their progress. So the first thing was related to what I said about the end of the module, test your knowledge questions. All you have to do is just click on your main page and you just give a due date. And you save it. And you can actually give anywhere from 1 to 5 attempts. Now, when courses are published, the attempts are defaulted to 1, and you could change them anywhere up to 1 to 5. Students can continue to practice after the number of attempts you allow, but it won't be scored in a grade book. The second way to assess students is to include assignments from our assignment bank, and they're upwards of 3,700 questions here. And I'll go ahead and quickly create one. The functionality is the same whether it's a homework or a test. We'll go next. And here you can pull from the entire content of the text. Now, just note that here, both the assignment bank and your lecture presentation materials reflect however one might have customized the text and then the additional contents down here. But the idea behind this is that you could pull together more comprehensive assignments across modules, and you can also create your own questions. So we'll grab a few. You can filter by levels of blooms. And please note that for every potential answer, including the correct answers, there is feedback in the form of an explanation. There are open-ended questions as well. Just know that if you were to assign them, that you have to score them before students would see their grade. So this time I'll go ahead and filter for some easier questions from this module. I'm going to point out that the next questions you're going to see are not from Principles of Biology. These are questions that I've authored with faculty who have either adopted the book, during in-services or sometimes in presentations. And these are not nature questions. These are just for fun. Hopefully some of them are good, though. You do have the option to build in feedback if you'd like in any of your own self-authored questions. There is the option to include questions with multiple responses. This happens to be a very good question. Actually, this question and this question were two particularly good ones put together by some faculty in New Jersey who adopted Principles of Biology. So I'm going to add all of these. So I have the option, I have a couple options here. I can deliver this as an online assignment in Principles of Biology, either straight up as a set of questions or as a pooled assignment where I would be selecting a subset of questions, or I could produce it as a offline assignment, which you could download, which you would have as a Word file, and then you could either hand out, or if you prefer, to put it in your own learning management system. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'll just go ahead and do a pooled assignment really briefly. I can give anywhere from 1 to 5 attempts. With our custom assignments, there's actually a mandatory time window, and that allows you, if you'd like, to deliver a proctored exam. And we'll make the deadline Halloween, almost at midnight. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign out and go into a student account. And before I look at this, I want to point out this. So earlier I was saying that one of the things that many faculty find positive, and many students find very beneficial about Principles of Biology, is the license does not expire. So if I were taking the first part of an introductory sequence, and then I came back next semester, and my new professor had a different course code, all I do is I put in the new course code, and my license switches over to the new professor's course. If there's instances, and sometimes it comes up where students taking 2 courses at the same time with this book, we can accommodate them with that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click into the book. And I'm going to go to the climate change module. And I'm going to click on it. And so here's the note that has been given to me. And I can go ahead. And put it in my browser and view it. And parenthetically, if you're interested in looking at this on your own time, it's called Song for a Warming Planet. And it's a doctoral student, University of Minnesota, who took about 100 years of temperature data from the Goddard Space Institute and plotted it as a cello melody. Oops. So I'm going to go back to main. The other way that the students can see any kind of notes that you share with them is on the study cards. And there they can actually see a composite of your comments. So we'll scroll down. And there you can see the notes right there. Now I am not a biologist. I did take some science classes for a couple of years, so I may be putting myself on the spot here. I'm going to try to take this assignment. I'm not sure, but I will. right, hopefully I got one right. All right, so I got 60%, and you can see that I do have feedback for correct responses as well. If I don't like my score, I can retake it. The pool that I put together is fairly small, so some of these are going to repeat. If using it, I would probably make a larger pool. So you can see there's a somewhat different set of questions. So I'm going to go back to main. I'm going to sign out. And I'm going to go back in as an instructor. I'm going to go into the gradebook. Now I can filter for several different ways in this gradebook. I'm going to show all. I'll do custom assignments. And then I can filter by points or percent. I'll just do it by points. I'll scroll over. I'm not sure that my score is actually loaded yet, but sometimes there's a 10 to 15 minute lag before it loads. I'm just going to go ahead and download the gradebook. And then you get an output with the student scores. There is an option to include student ID if you want, if that might be helpful for you if you're utilizing this with a learning management system. So with that, that's a quick overview of Principles of Biology. If you are interested in signing up for a sample copy, I encourage you to go to nature.com/principles and register. And if you have any questions after today, although I'm encouraging everyone to send questions through the chat right now, but my contact information is here, and I'm available if anyone is interested for a one-on-one conversation or a sort of group call, and in some cases I can travel. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And actually, Nicole, would it be possible to unmute participants if possible?
Sure, we can unmute. I have a couple of questions in the question and answer section. So one was, how are test attempts scored? Last attempt, highest grade, average, and can you change that?
Actually, it's in the gradebook. You filter by that right here.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I also have another question. Can tests be imported, exported into an LMS or into a printed version? I think you already answered that, but.
Yeah, the printed version is pretty straight. Yeah, I mean, the printed version, what you do is, we'll just go like this. What you effectively get is an answer key. You can do up to 4 random versions. You just have to note that, again, what you get initially is the answer key. So you'd want to copy and paste your different versions.
Okay. The next question, and this is by Jennifer Welch, and I might just unmute Jennifer. The question is item or section analysis, and I'm not sure that we know.
Yeah, yes. Let me go back into the grade book. It's fairly simple, but you can check the question across your class. I mean, this is a small sample, obviously, but you could very quickly see which questions the students are having trouble with in something like this. Does that answer the question?
Jennifer, I've unmuted you if you have an additional question, or if that didn't answer your question. Maybe she fell off. Oh, she said yes, thanks. Okay, great.
Okay.
All right, so then we have another question from David. How often is the textbook updated? Editions every couple of years, like the typical hard copy? Question.
The model is different from the print publication cycle. There's two kind of updates. We have platform updates, which are about once a month, and they kind of run in the background. Content updates are twice a year. We aim for it to be before any start of a semester. So earlier on, we did actually, I think a year or so ago, we did have a content update at the beginning of the semester, but we avoid that at all costs. And this past year for July, it came out in July, so it didn't. There was no impact at the start of a semester. So, and that's our plan going into the future. So again, this is an example where we can update the text over time, and it's, we're not beholden to what the economic imperatives of a print publisher around this. We can update the content for the benefit of customers.
All right. And then there's a question about the signing in and out of the student view. Is the only way to do that to sign in and out of a student account, or is there an ability to see the student's view from the instructor view?
You can see that. You can. The only difference in my doing that is because if I were doing scores, if I was trying to, like do scores here, they wouldn't take. But you can click on student view right here, and you get the basic gist of it. So the main page looks very similar to yours, and then the big difference is that they do not have the assignment bank, and they have study resources instead of instructor resources. And actually, to the point of, I want to jump to one thing. As far as instructor resources go, in the sample copy, two really important things that you can take a look at. There is lecture support. I mean, you can. The sample account actually has one that you can take a look at, and then of course you can look at the list of all the primary literature articles. The other thing that you can do is, this is true of adopted instructor accounts and any student account. There's the desktop edition, which you can download, which I have right here on my, and that's where you can download for offline reading.
All right. And then we have another question. Can you elaborate on the prefabricated quantitative assessment reporting and formative versus summative assessment tools, or the ability to generate them easily?
Actually, whoever asked that question, could they speak up, because I want to make sure I understand it.
Sure. Let me see if I can unmute.
Hi, this is Ernest. Hi, this is Ernest. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
So my question is really, I've played around with a lot of these things over the last couple of years, okay. And invariably when one gets to, going beyond the simple just exporting to Excel, and then you have to do a bit of manipulation to get a graph, or, if you're really into your quantitative assessment, and I think that's something we all have to be today, because the preparedness of our students is invariably changing from one semester to the next, and what we worked as a teaching approach may or may not work with the next group. So you've got to really make a lot of fine-tuning and adjustment on the fly. And so I want to just have a better sense of, beyond just a prefabricated quiz, are there tools that, for instance, are there prefabricated quizzes that are sort of very quick and to the chase of, what are the key learning objectives that you can assign maybe before you have your in-class engagement, and then you can give them the quiz afterwards that's maybe more detailed, so that you have that formative and summative assessment, and you can show the value of what you did in terms of your engagement of the students in the class. That's a really important point. And then also how that is captured. So in other words, how easy is it to actually get a real report that's meaningful beyond just simply, I export all this into a spreadsheet, that you now have to invest a few hours of time to make anything meaningful out of it that you can share with your colleagues. Does that help? Yeah,
I'll try to answer that. I mean, as far as the kind of detail you're looking for in the the export, that's something that we may we may move forward with in the future. So I realize that what we have as far as the output of data for the kind of thing you're asking is probably pretty basic. As far as, formative and summative assessment, again, I don't know how sophisticated it is for what you would be looking for, but the idea of the end of the module questions is to just do a quick check for the students before they perhaps show up in your lecture, and then using the assignment bank allows you to sort of, you could use it as a summative assessment after. Does that answer your question, or?
Yeah, that's good, but again, the reporting is really the important part, because I want to be able to connect two things and get a graph that shows me before and after without me having to spend hours in Excel. That's something, though, that it's not just nature here. That seems to be sort of the next phase for everybody, I guess. Now, is this driven by sort of dealing with higher mandates from above about evaluating students' performance on learning outcomes? Well, that was the initial drive, but I have to tell you, I'm a convert, and I believe as an instructor it's critical. Again, given the fact that, I mean, it's going to vary depending on the institution you're in, but when you're in a public institution today, the reality is, and it doesn't matter what level you're at and where your standards are, the kids that are being pumped out by our standard K through 12 systems are a wide-ranging group in terms of their preparedness for college. And so I think it's absolutely imperative and critical that irrespective of whether there are mandates from higher or above, that as instructors we be, if we're teaching science, we need to employ science. We need to be data-driven, right? Your name's Ernest? Yes. I would say if you want to jot down my email and drop me a quick email, I can sort of loop you in as we sort of do further development along these lines, if you'd like. Okay. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome.
Chris, we are over time, but there is one more question.
Okay.
If you have some time to answer, are there any correlations done with AP Biology curriculum, and are there AP classes using this text, and do you have any feedback from them if they are using it?
Yeah, actually, let's see. We don't have any direct, we have not sort of developed it around the AP exam in any way, but with it being as flexible as it is, I think it would be fairly easy to do. We do have people using it for AP. It is not bluntly a main focus of our sales and marketing effort. And so I'm not particularly close in a lot of cases to what's going on in the high schools. I'm much closer to what's happening in the colleges and universities. Having said that, it could easily be adopted for AP, and people are definitely looking at it and adopting it for AP.
All right. I think that was the last question that comes through.
Okay.
So is there any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just to reiterate.
If there's any other questions, just follow up with Chris.
Yeah, and I encourage anybody who's interested to go ahead and sign up for a sample copy at nature.com/principles. And if you have any additional questions, that's my contact information. And,
great, thanks, Chris. And also, when you close out of the meeting today, you will be prompted, directed to that website, so you can sign up for your sample right after the event. And everybody have a great day. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you.